What if one of the most detailed accounts of angels was never included in the version of the Bible most people read today? Not because it lacked meaning, but because it revealed too much. There exists an ancient text known as the Book of Enoch, a book that was once widely known, studied, and preserved. Yet today, many people have never heard of it, and those who have often don't realize how much it contains. Because this is not just another religious writing. It is a detailed account of events that are only briefly mentioned elsewhere. Events that involve angels, their descent to earth, and the consequences that followed. The Book of Enoch expands on a short and mysterious passage found in Genesis, a passage that speaks of the sons of God and the daughters of men. In most interpretations, it is left unexplained. But Enoch provides a narrative, a structured account. According to this text, there was a group of angels assigned to observe humanity. They were not meant to interfere. They were not meant to become involved. But over time, something changed. Observation became curiosity. Curiosity became desire. And desire led to action. These angels would later be known as the Watchers. And their decision would alter human history in a way that could not be reversed. Because they did not come alone, they came together, bound by a decision and an oath. And once that oath was made, there was no turning back. What follows is not just a story of descent, but a story of consequence. Because when the Watchers left their place, they didn't just arrive on Earth. They brought something with them, something that humanity was never meant to receive. And once it was given, everything began to change, in ways that would soon spiral out of control. But before the chaos, before the corruption, there was a moment. A decision, a gathering, a descent, and it began on a mountain. The descent of the Watchers was not impulsive. It was deliberate, organized, and most importantly, unified. According to the Book of Enoch, these angels understood the weight of what they were about to do. This was not a minor act of disobedience. This was a direct violation of their purpose. They were meant to observe, not participate. Yet they chose to go further. To ensure that none would turn back, they made a pact, an oath, each one committing to the same decision. No one would withdraw, no one would abandon the plan. Together, they would descend. This moment is described as taking place on a mountain, often identified as Mount Hermon. It was there that the decision became permanent, and from that point forward, their path was set. When they came down to earth, they did not arrive as weak beings. They arrived with presence, authority, and knowledge. Humanity encountered something it had never seen before. Beings that were not human, yet capable of interaction, communication, influence. And at first, that influence may not have seemed dangerous. But the Watchers did not remain distant. They became involved, deeply involved, and what began as interaction soon became transformation. Because they began to share things. Not just ideas, but knowledge. Knowledge that would accelerate human development, but also distort it. And once that knowledge spread, it could not be undone, because what they revealed would change everything about how humans lived, thought, and behaved. And this was only the beginning, because the knowledge they brought was not limited. It was vast, detailed, and powerful, far beyond what humanity was prepared to handle. The Watchers did not simply exist among humans, they taught them, and what they taught changed the course of civilization. According to the Book of Enoch, they revealed knowledge that had not been given to humanity, knowledge that was not meant to be accessed at that time. They taught the making of weapons, how to shape metal, how to create tools not just for survival, but for conflict. They introduced the art of war, and with it came violence. They also revealed forms of knowledge that went beyond the physical, sorcery, enchantments, practices that blurred the line between the natural and the unseen. They taught the observation of the stars, the movements of celestial bodies, ways to interpret patterns in the sky, knowledge that gave insight, but also confusion. And then, there were teachings related to appearance, adornment enhancement, ways to influence perception, to attract, to manipulate. And with these teachings, something began to shift. Human behavior changed. Values began to distort. What was once simple became complex. What was once balanced became unstable. The spread of this knowledge was rapid, and its effects were immediate. But knowledge alone was not the greatest consequence of their actions. There was something else, something that went beyond teaching, something that would introduce an entirely new presence on Earth, a presence that would push the world even further into chaos. Because the Watchers did not stop at influence, they crossed a line, and the result would be unlike anything humanity had ever seen.
The boundary between the Watchers and humanity was not meant to be crossed, but according to the Book of Enoch, it was. And the result of that crossing was the emergence of something new. The Nephilim, these were not ordinary beings. They were described as giants, larger, stronger, and fundamentally different from humans. Their presence alone would have been overwhelming, but it was their behavior. That changed everything. They consumed resources at a rate that could not be sustained. And when those resources were no longer enough, they turned to more destructive means. Violence increased, not just among them, but across humanity. The influence of the Watchers, combined with the presence of the Nephilim, created an environment of instability. Order began to collapse. Communities were disrupted, and what had once been a developing world began to unravel. The Nephilim were not just powerful, they were unpredictable, and as their presence spread, so did the consequences. The earth itself is described as becoming corrupted, filled with conflict, filled with imbalance, and filled with suffering. This was no longer a localized issue. It had become global, and according to these accounts, it reached a point where it could no longer continue, because what had been set in motion was now beyond control, even for those who had caused it. And eventually, it drew attention from beyond the earth itself. The state of the earth had changed. What was once ordered had become chaotic. What was once balanced had become corrupted. And according to the Book of Enoch, this did not go unnoticed. The events unfolding on Earth reached beyond the physical world, and a response was initiated. This was no longer just a matter of disobedience. It was a disruption of creation itself. And so, judgment was declared. Specific angels were sent with a clear purpose: to intervene, to restore order, to stop what had begun. The Watchers, those who had descended, were to be held accountable. They would not return freely. They would be bound, confined, removed from influence. Their actions had consequences, and those consequences would now take effect. The Nephilim, their existence would not continue. They would be destroyed. The corruption they brought would be removed. But even this was not enough. Because the influence had spread too far, the damage had reached every part of the earth, and a complete reset became the only solution. What followed would not be selective. It would not be partial. It would be total. A cleansing of everything that had been affected, and it would come in a form that would change the world forever. The response was not gradual. It was absolute or flood. According to the Book of Enoch, this event was not random. It was a direct response to what had taken place. The corruption, the influence of the Watchers, the presence of the Nephilim, all of it had reached a level that could no longer be sustained. And so, the earth was cleansed. Water covered the land, ending an era that had spiraled out of control. But even after the flood, the story does not simply end, because some accounts suggest that not everything was erased. The physical presence of the Nephilim may have been removed, but their influence did not completely disappear. There are references to lingering effects, unseen forces, residual impact, and the Watchers themselves were not destroyed. They were bound, confined, awaiting a future judgment. Their story, unfinished. What makes this account even more significant is that it exists outside what many people are familiar with. The Book of Enoch presents details that are not widely included in most traditions, yet it has been preserved, studied, and passed down, raising questions that remain open. Questions about the past, about interpretation, and about how much of this story is still not fully understood. Because if these events were once believed, if they were once recorded in such detail, then one question remains: how much of human history has yet to be fully uncovered?